So I just want to do a quick rundown of the different coding languages for people who are just starting out. So when you're first starting, you don't know what you're doing. It's often hard to like pick the right language. And the first thing I would say is that it actually doesn't really matter which language you pick. There's like a couple core main ones that you want to stick to, but other than that, like you can't go wrong. So I'd say JavaScript is one of them, really good language. You got Python, Java, C++, and C Sharp. C is actually okay. You'll see that one a lot, but it's kind of a technical language. It's right down to the hardware level. So I'd stay away from that one personally if you're just starting out. So what these languages, they're all really the same. They're just balancing typing speed versus performance speed. So some of the languages are easier to type. You don't have to type as much stuff. They're going to look more readable, but they run a little bit slower. So the computer's doing stuff in the background, and as a result, that costs performance. Now, most times this is just going to be a fraction of a second. So in most cases, like with websites and stuff, they usually pick the more languages like JavaScript where the fraction of a second doesn't matter. But if you're doing something maybe like robotics or rendering or like a video game, sometimes they'll go to languages like C++ or even C, where you want to get like each little bit of optimization matters. So if something's running like 1,000 times a second, you want to have like each fraction of a second is going to count. So that's where languages like those are more common. And then there's languages kind of in the middle, so like C sharp, where it's kind of a middle ground. It's not hyper fast, but it's also not too hard to write. Kind of takes a balance. So that's what these languages are all balancing out, but they're really all the same. Like they're going to do the same types of things. Once you learn one, you've kind of learned them all. So let's just take a look at JavaScript just to kind of prove that. You go into something like variables, right? You got x equals 5. You're just storing the number 5 in x. If you go over to something like C++, we have variables, and you'll notice a lot of these terms are all the same. You'll have things like for loops, functions, comments. It's very similar. So int mynum equals 15, same idea. We'll go to C sharp, variables. The example they use here, I think, is, yeah, int mynum equals 15. I think those two are actually identical. The console write line is a bit different, but how you save the variable is going to be the same. So pretty cool. So don't worry too much about picking like the wrong language. Just make sure you're picking an actual coding language, like one of the more popular ones. You don't want to learn something obscure like R when you're first starting out, or like Kotlin or TypeScript. You want to stick to the main ones. So JavaScript, Python, Java, C++, C Sharp. C if you're crazy and you like really technical stuff, I guess I could say. So if you look at the tutorials here, there's a lot of different stuff, right? Like there's JSON, Angular, Node. It could kind of overwhelm you. So what these are, a lot of these are just frameworks. So people have taken this core language and they've kind of simplified things. So they've written a library where instead of having to write like 100 lines of code, they've kind of simplified that into one line. So it makes the process quicker. So you want to make sure you don't start with one of these because then you're not going to understand what's going on. But once you've learned the main language, these can be a way to kind of make your coding speed a bit quicker. Just more efficient ways to work with the code in some cases. So something like Node.js is going to set up a backend server. So just a way to host your files and have them show up on a website. Things like Angular are going to be front end, so just moving like UI elements around, just quicker ways of doing that. So you don't have to type quite as much, not having to reinvent the wheel. JSON is like serialization, so basically taking code and then saving it into a text file, maybe sending it to someone in like a package. So these are kind of like specialized things. You don't really want to start with this stuff, but like over time, you'll just start to learn them. So make sure you're starting with like a standard language and just learning the basics. Now, in terms of which one I would pick for learning, I'd go with JavaScript because you have to actually learn an environment, right? Like just typing out the code is only the first step. Then you have to actually have your code show up on the screen. And that can get a little technical. Like you have to start learning other programs, maybe like APIs, all this stuff. And it can overwhelm you. So with something like JavaScript, HTML is super simple to learn. You just pick up HTML in like 10 minutes. And then you pair that with JavaScript and you can start to get stuff working. Like you can start building apps right away inside the web browser without having to worry about downloading other stuff or learning APIs or any of that nonsense. So I'll give you a really quick example here. We just go into, this is just a file I loaded up from my computer. So just single text file. I wrote some HTML in it. You can see the HTML over here. So we've got a button and an input. I just typed in button and a button appears on the screen. Typed in input and input appears. So basically whatever you write on that HTML file, it's going to show up on your web browser. And then you can start to make more complex programs like this one. So it's very simple. There's just a text field here, 2 buttons, but you can start to see how that works with the code. So there's JavaScript behind this running in the background. It's on the right-hand side here. So all the same text file. I've got the HTML right up here. I've got the JavaScript here. So it's just a big text file with HTML, JavaScript. I threw a little CSS in just to kind of style it. Let's see if we got that down here. That's all the CSS. I just wanted to align the text so it wasn't up in the top corner like that. So CSS is easy, nothing really to worry about there. Yeah, so we've got like a class for riddles. So kind of understanding coding concepts now, right? We're getting into things like classes where like a riddle has a question and an answer. So we want to pair that type of data into an object. We've got things like arrays. So if I cycle through riddles, I'm going to need more than one riddle, right? So we have an array of riddles. We've got things like an index. So which riddle are we on? Just things like that. So JavaScript is really easy to get the program hooked up. If you have an idea that you're working on, you can actually like start to build that idea right away. And it's really fun for learning. Like you can access the document here. You see I use document dot. So you can just kind of grab things, say, hey, I want to change the color of this piece of text. When this button is pressed, I want to do this code that I've written, and things like that. So it's really, really easy to work with the two, with HTML and JavaScript. So that'd be my recommendation. I'd pick JavaScript. There's things like if you pick C#, you can do that with the Unity engine. Unity doesn't take too long to learn, and then you can have like a pretty good visual. You do have to learn, right? Then you have to pick up the Unity engine. You have to pick up the API, so you have to learn very specific commands for that Unity engine. So it can get a little complicated. But if like video games is your thing and that's going to motivate you, then it's a really great way to learn because you can start building video games. You type a line of code, it's going to like move something on the screen, right? Maybe enable, disable, play an animation. So you really want to connect your language to something that you're going to start to see results right away. You don't want to get stuck in the command line and just kind of be forever building stuff that you don't understand. So I'm building up a Discord community where we're going to kind of go over this stuff. So we're doing kind of like classes where we'll just pick a language. We'll go through here, just kind of cover the basics. And we also do a bit of app building, just simple stuff like this, really just to learn how to code. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave the link down below. And thanks for watching.